primary, what I did was I looked at past history of the primary voter turnout, and knowing that the Democratic ballot probably is uncontested, and the Republican ballot, it may have 2 contested races, and we don't have any contested races for the primary at the local level, based on historical data. So in communication with the advisory committee, what we're going to do, the setup for the primary will be mail ballots to all Democrats and Republicans. And there's close to, I think there's over 7,000 ballots that will go out to Democrats and Republicans. We will have early voting 1 week before the election in here for the primary. And then on election day, we will have this service center open from 7 to 7 on June 24th. We will not have any other voter service centers open on election day, nor drop-offs. Okay. So I just wanted to apprise you of that and see if you have any questions. I wanted to know more information about the data.
Well, a question on your first announcement, because Lindy's leaving, but we're not going to replace Lindy. Are we going to be stretching our clerk, BOCC's clerk, too much or no?
Well, it's not that we're not going to be replacing the FTE.
Right.
It's that there's movement right now to cover the board in the interim of somebody who's experienced. And so, yeah, so Janice is going to be looking at going through a hiring process, I believe.
Well, actually, well, what happened, let me go back
Okay.
historically. What I did was I pulled a position out of recording so I could support the election activity. And Lindy's retiring, and she was 75% FTE recording and 25% working with you. We made the determination that we needed to replace Lindy with a full-time recording person. We need that support in the recording department. So that shifted, you're right, that shifted workload on to Jeanette from 100 FTE to 125%. So what we're doing with Jeanette right now is we're looking at what duties has Jeanette performed in the past that weren't statutorily, that weren't under the purview of the clerk's statutory requirements. So I'm working with Jeanette to look at what are some of the other duties that we perform so that we can pull that. There are some projects that she probably will not be able to complete earlier, probably later, but we're juggling with it.
And George, there's another element where Jeanette's been providing a lot of support on the procurement side. And so as we go out, you know, the board approved in this last budget hiring a procurement position that will sit in finance. They are preparing to advertise and recruit for that position. So there will be some, I believe, transfer of workload from the clerk's office to that position when it's on board. And so there is going to be a transition period where some of Janice's staff is under stress, which is something they're well practiced at this point, I think. But
as many other departments are as well.
Yeah, and so we do have some opportunities to offload some of that work, particularly on the procurement side. She's been a go-to person. So.
And there are other areas of responsibility she undertakes, so we're discussing how do we shift workload to accommodate.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for asking.
Additional questions on either of those two topics? Rachel?
Well, you know, just so you can allay my fears, not having any sort of down valley drop-off on primary day, is there any alternative to just have a drop-off box or anything without a full vote center?
You know, when I looked at the statistics, the data, in 2006 and 2008, we did full vote primary, and 182 people showed up in 2006, and 216 people showed up in 2008. We are mailing ballots to over 7,000 people, so those are returned to our office. Our drop-off is our office. Do you want to, we're trying to look at our resources and how we can allocate our resources to support advertising because of the new election law. We have a gubernatorial coming up as well. So what we did was we discussed based on past activity and where we're at. That's why we need a decision on it moving forward.
Okay.
Steve?
I remember that the mail-in ballot took more than one stamp the last time, but people didn't realize that.
What happens...
If you could figure out what the postage, first-class postage would be to return, take to the post office, have them weigh it and whatever.
Sure.
If we could keep the mail back cost to the voter at just one, whatever, I don't even know what the stamps are now.
Sure.
One forever stamp, that could help to increase the voter turnout.
Okay. Okay. What we deal with is, right now, we order envelopes, we make our estimates, we put everything in place. I think for the primary, the ballots will be shorter. Therefore, my guesstimate would be, it would be one stamp, but we don't know quite until we get there what's going on. This is the wait. And another thing that happens is we send out a secrecy sleeve of ballot and instructions. Depends what they return back to us. Sometimes we put the instructions in. A lot of times it's on the cusp. We had one year where we swore the humidity made a difference between, it was on the cusp of what it cost, so. So what you're asking me is, can we better communicate that to the community so they
Just
know
let
what it's
let the public know, this is only going to take
one stamp
to return it. If it's a borderline thing, tell them if you rip off the instructions and don't mail those back to us, then
Okay.
it's still one stamp or whatever communication would be needed.
Okay.
That would help.
Other comments or questions? Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Charlotte, would you like to present on the,
Are we still in open discussion or no?
well, I was going to, that
That's
was
fine,
kind
I'm
of
just
a,
curious.
that was kind of an implemented. I
No,
think
it's fine.
since Charlotte's here, why don't we keep moving on the agenda item that was for 3 o'clock, now moved for 2 o'clock, which is the citizen board renewals.
Charlotte Anderson, County Manager's Office. I'm just here to answer any questions you might have on the packet material and regarding citizen board renewals. There are 3 applicants that you've interviewed and you've not made decisions on, and of course all the renewals.
Shall we tackle the 3 applicants that we've interviewed at this point? We have an open seat on the planning and zoning, and Joe Kraybacher has applied for that. We have a renewal of the Open Space and Trails Board, Howie Mallory, and we have a APSHA joint seat between the city and the county, which was Michelle Keys.
I'm supportive of all 3.
I would appoint all 3.
I think we're
Okay.
supportive of all 3, great. The next was just a kind of an FYI of a citizens that have resigned from the board, and I think you put together a good chart for us of what seats we have to fill. Have we started posting online those seats and everything?
Advertising is continuing
Okay.
in several places. So I will, once we get the renewals done, then I'll go in and update and revise those areas where we're advertising.
And then we've gotten a packet of renewal applications. And just a refresher, the way we set it up was that certain boards we would automatically interview upon renewal to get to know their feedback and that sort of stuff. And then on other boards, we would have them fill out a renewal application, answering some questions so that we would, again, be able to get some feedback, but not necessarily have to interview the individuals. And there are a good handful in that renewal packet. Does anybody want to address any concerns or anything that they saw in the packet? I thought it was some good feedback and good to know as we move forward making policy decisions on the various boards. But everybody seems to be doing a good job and happy doing what they're doing. Steve?
Yeah, the one concern I would have based on comments and also just personal knowledge would be something like the conflict committee pool. Both Michael and Brooke commented that they have never met, they've never had a conflict brought to them, and they're still willing to serve on the board, but they wish that we would bring.
Well, we don't want
Business to
we don't want a conflict to bring to them, because the conflict is basically if there's a complaint or a conflict per se, that they would be the board that would gather that information together.
I do
So
hear
good
it
and
every year.
good and bad.
Yeah.
I guess, maybe just making sure that they know what their duties and responsibilities are if a conflict comes up, but that's part of that renewal application is, this is what the board is. They get that information, these sheets, I'm assuming, which has the purpose and the authority.
Actually, they don't receive those
Okay.
sheets themselves, but
They get them from a different form.
Yeah.
As part of the board charter and things
Yeah.
like that. I'm,
So are we in favor of renewing the applications of the renewal applicants?
I am,
I
Yes.
definitely.
with a thank you letter for the service, or however we let them know.
The service of all those people is very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to have them all willing to continue serving.
Great. Anything else on this item?
No?
resignation letter, thank yous have already been sent out. I think you sent
Yeah.
those a couple weeks ago. So
I did indeed.
taking care of those.
Ron, what do we do about the 2 no responses on there? We don't know whether they
I would
want to or not.
I would say we put them out until we get a response, we put them out for interviews, for open seats.
I'll contact them
Advertise.
again
Yeah, advertise
and
them.
follow up and make sure that they're not out of town or something like that. And then we'll just advertise it as a vacancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I apologize that we're a little jumping around here based on people's availability schedule. I think we've told Cindy and Alan to try to come back when they can. So why don't we go back to open discussion?
I just had one item for you. Last week, the board had asked for, I think, some questions regarding Nancy Leslie's, of Nancy Leslie regarding the Pro Challenge. I was not here for that discussion, but I did get a look at the minutes and a follow-up email. The questions, as I understood them, was whether Nancy planned to attend all the biweekly updates. And the answer to that is yes, she does have some travel conflicts, both for work and otherwise. She won't be able to make those weeks, but there will be an update. The other question is the application online, and is it updated when the submittals change? That one's a little bit more complicated, and we probably need a better understanding of the mechanics, but yes, the application has been submitted. My understanding is that submittal is online. There are some challenges with the system that's being used. There continue to be challenges with the system that's being used in terms of updating every time there's a change. They have said that when changes are made, they are going to try and work with an application specialist to make sure those are posted. But again, it's not a seamless operation in essence. And that's something we still need to look at. That's our system is, it's a joint system really, and it's just not very flexible. Works great for 95% of events that don't have a significant change to their application. This is one of those events, as we've discussed in the past, that is pretty dynamic in nature, and so we're still working on how that might play out. I don't know if I didn't see that there are any other questions on the board's part, but I don't know if that covers the kind of discussion that you had last week while I was gone.
I mean, the only question I brought up was the status of the routes, specifically for day 2, because we hadn't heard back, and if we were going to have perhaps a next bi-weekly meeting, we're going to have the sheriffs or the state patrol here to provide some more information on the routes and why they feel one route is better than the other.
Yeah, and I did advise, I had a separate discussion with Nancy before I even knew you all had this discussion, and had recommended that it would be good to have some of the public safety officials, if they've been weighing in, and that's what has been driving some of the route changes. It'd be good to have some of that discussion at the table so you guys can hear it. Does that happen at the next meeting? I'm not sure, but it'll happen at one of these upcoming bi-weekly updates.
And I don't see any of the bi-weekly updates on our future agendas.
Yeah, they're done as MOIs, and we don't always have the MOIs
Listed
listed. Yeah. But if you'd like them noted, we could certainly put
I
down
think
when those
if
bi-weeklies
Nancy's
will
working our
come.
schedule, there's no point of doing it every 2 weeks. If she's out of town one week, we move it another week, but the sooner we get it on our agendas and get a list of them to Nancy, then we can coordinate, our future agendas when we go through future agendas.
Okay. Well, we can work with her
Seems to
and
make
see
sense.
if we can be flexible on those to make sure she's here.
Other open discussion? George?
Yeah, I've had a couple of calls regarding the recycling center down in the industrial park in Basalt since the town recycling has left. It's really a question of lack of access. Those hours for that recycling center, which is run by Waste Management, is Monday to Friday from 9 to 3 p.m. So it makes it very difficult, not impossible, for anyone who actually has to work to be able to make those hours. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to open earlier, stay later, have a half day on Saturday to accommodate the residents who would like to recycle.
We can certainly reach out to Waste Management and see what those opportunities are, and we've received some of those same calls and concerns, and so that's on our radar screen as staff too.
Other open discussion? Should we move to future agendas? Anybody have any comments on future agendas, starting with John, I guess?
Yeah, at this point, just to note, next week we have our board retreat, so we'll be replacing our Tuesday work session with that. That'll be from 8:30 to 5 at the Limelight on April 1st, and then 8:30 to 1.
That might
Phyllis,
still say
she's still
executive
locked,
session.
And it does.
That's locked?
Yeah, Cindy was just trying to get in. Or at least it says executive session. It does.
And other than that, I do not have any items for future agenda today.
Just the one note that we might add an executive session to Wednesday, April 2nd.
Yes.
Our meeting is scheduled to end at 1 o'clock. We are scheduled to have a lunch that day within that time period. So we might have an executive session from 1 to 2 or something on that day, pending some negotiation stuff. So people can adjust their schedules accordingly. Rachel?
Yeah, it's not our current calendar, but I wanted to go ahead and get it out there. I will be absent for the work session of Tuesday, May 20th. The Western Interstate Region of National Association of Counties is going to be meeting in Alaska, and I will be there. The other one I wanted to bring up is that we've just gotten the notifications on the CCI annual conference. It is Monday, June 2nd through Wednesday, June 4th. And so I would imagine that both Steve and myself will be absent for Tuesday, the 3rd of June's work session. And so you can put that into your future scheduling if there's any critical items you'd rather hold off on that day, or if there's not enough, you guys could have a week off the first week of June.
George?
We have May 6th and June 3rd as joint meetings with City Council.
The May 6th meeting is canceled, is my understanding, and we're moving it to June 3rd, so those probably, we forgot to erase one.
Okay.
And then, Rob, an item for me that isn't necessarily a matter of future agendas, but just scheduling, is there is a conference on population health and reducing healthcare costs through the Triple Aim, which is very much in line with what we're doing with Valley Health Alliance. A number of local providers are collecting to go, and they've invited myself and other members of VHA also to attend to further those partnerships. And while I haven't signed up yet, it's my intent right now to go. It's during our off week, so it'd be April 29th and 30th. I'd be out for that.
Steve?
On Tuesday, April 8th at noon, there is an event at the Senior Center. It's a recognition for volunteers at the senior programs. And that lunch is at the Senior Center. And I was wondering if there was any, I mean, I would like to go to that lunch, and I could go and then just leave early and come back here for our 1 o'clock, but if we could move just start a little bit later, like at 1:15 or something, perhaps with the airport surface transportation best studies. That would give them an extra 15 minutes that make it a little more doable for me to go to that.
Which day is that?
April 8th, Tuesday.
Okay.
And I noticed that we have two pretty big breaks worked into the schedule there already. We just started a little bit
Come
later.
back at 1 and have a 2 o'clock break. We can skip the 2 o'clock break and move that back to 1:15.
That
That's
shouldn't be a problem.
the same morning as that ACRA breakfast on Tuesday from 8
That's
to 10?
correct.
And where is that being held?
Yeah.
I've been asked to speak at it, but I am not sure. Michael, do you remember where the Acro breakfast is being held? I can look it up real quick.
Okay. Because we had talked a little bit about whether that should start at 10:15,
Yeah.
so that you could be back, and any other board members who were attending that city-county ACRA breakfast.
I don't have a location. I have it in here, but I don't have a location.
Yeah, I'm not
What's the
seeing
date of the
it either.
breakfast?
April
April
8th. It's instead of their business luncheon type thing, they decided to do a breakfast this calendar section, whatever
Yeah, it's
it
either
is.
the Meadows or the Jerome, most likely, but, we'll find out where it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not finding it.
Any other future agenda stuff? Okay. Where does that leave us now? No eyes. Cindy, you want to come talk about your new position budget supplemental?
I'm Cindy Rubin, the Community Development Director, and I have with me our team, Brian Paul, our Chief Building Official, Lance Clark, our Planning Director and Assistant Community Development Director, and Ellen Fasano, our Long Range Planner is here. We're before you today because we have a need for a couple positions, and to talk to you a little bit about the history here We came to you last September looking at our fee structure, and we said at that time we wanted to look at how we were dealing with our valuation policies and how that was being calculated. And we found that we, in fact, did increase our budget probably to the tune of about $250,000 with the valuation correction that we made. We then decided to hold off on coming back with any fees at that time because we felt like we needed to see how all that adjusted. And due to that increase, and also due to the fact that we've had an increase in volume of applications since last year when we put together the budget, we are now before you asking for a couple positions. And I'd like to back up a little bit. We also received we talked to each of you at one point before you came, Steve, about your biggest priorities for our department, and that was to have a good turnaround time, good service to the public for building permits and planning applications. Currently, we are not in a position that we think is ideal. We have one building plans examiner who, during even the slower seasons in the winter, we are looking at, a 6 to 8 week turnaround for smaller permits, and we're calling those homes below 5,000 square feet, and larger permits are up to about a 12-week, 8 to 12 week turnaround. Ideally, what I heard from the board was we'd like to be looking at more of a 4 to 6 week turnaround. And once again, our survey that we just did with the public was pretty strong that is one of the priorities of the community, to have a more efficient turnaround period on those applications. So we thought it was a good time to come back before you and ask for, number one, the pending position that we actually had in the pending category in the 2014 budget for a combo plans examiner. And that position, as you know, is one that can help us review the plans and then hopefully also help us with our inspections. Because one of the things that is a little trickier to explain, and we want to come back to you at a later date with a whole budget outline for a sustainable budget over a next 5-year period. But one of the harder things to really think about is when we get in one of these larger homes, sometimes it takes us 3 years to complete that. So what happens is we get that budget, we get that revenue in, up front when the issuance of the permit, but we're basically working off of that revenue for 2 or 3 years based on what it takes to do the work encompassed with the inspections of those larger homes. So we have all these budget timing issues, we want to go over with you to really have a more sustainable operation. But one of the elements too about working with getting a building permit out the door is our zoning officer review. And what we're really asking for is pre-2011 levels in our zoning positions. We had 2 zoning positions and a planning engineer at the time. Right now we only have 1 zoning position, so again, a bottleneck for getting those building permits out the door is the zoning review, because we do a planning compliance, so all the conditions of approval that you see get put on an application actually get checked out in the field by a zoning officer, as well as going over the information in paper, with the building permit plans to ensure that all these issues have been taken care of. And that sometimes can create a bottleneck as well. So we think if we have these 2 positions, we will be shooting for the goal of the 4 to 6 week turnaround that you had requested. But without that, we don't believe that we're going to be able to, increase our turnaround time, especially now that spring is upon us and the volume is going to do nothing but increase. And so that's where I am. And John, I don't know if you had something you wanted to add?
Well, I just add, the commitment that we've made to the board in the past, and Rob reminded me of this, is that, we need to bring back the big picture to you guys as far as the whole fee structure. We started off by first, let's really focus on tightening up our process for determining one half of the equation, which is the valuation side, and see how that plays out. And I think, as you can see from these numbers, that's made a big difference. We have two things happening right now. We've had an increase in the average values, I think, that our permit fees are being based on, but we're also seeing an increase in activity, and that's what's really pushing us on the service level side. And so we have been going through an exercise of analyzing our processes, analyzing our resources, and now we're in the process of projecting. If these trends continue, what is it that we need to fund to maintain our service levels so that we can reset fees and come back and have a comprehensive fee discussion with you. That is probably now about 3 weeks out. So we are planning on bringing that back to the board in about 3 weeks. As Cindy said, we have construction season starting up now. During the budget, we had talked to the board about a pending position, which was the building and plans examiner position, and that we might be bringing that forward, and that is in this request, and the revenues are certainly there to justify that. The position that we did not have as good a handle on when we were doing the budget and what it contributed in terms of a bottleneck, in terms of timing, was the zoning review piece. And as we've been, keeping track of where our permit times are, where our permits are spending time and where the review times are at, what we discovered was the zoning review is a significant bottleneck. And so that simply adding the building inspection and plans examiner, which is important, if we leave the bottleneck in the zoning review, we're not likely to see the full benefit of the turnaround time in the process. And so that's why we're bringing this position forward. We're doing them now because construction is starting up. It's around the corner and we need some time to get folks ramped up. We do understand we need to bring the fee discussion back to you. We'll do that. Frankly, there is enough margin in increased fee collections right now that from a budgetary perspective, the bottom line is still to the positive while adding these, and leaves some room for us to do some of the things with the fees that we had talked about with the board, which is how do we make them more progressive in terms of the fee structure. And so those are recommendations that we'll be bringing back to you. George?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. I think the timing is actually pretty good. As Cindy said, we just finished getting our community survey results where the permitting process to obtain permits for construction and renovation, the level of satisfaction was very low, but the need is very high. Mm-hmm. And so this is an immediate response, one would say, to address one of these issues that has been highlighted for us to work on. So I support that.
Rachel?
Well, I support it as well. It goes to our economic sustainability goal and others. The other thing I would say, though, is that we should bear in mind that these salaries are calculated not including the first 4 months of 2014. Mm-hmm. And so when we go into the next year's budget, it's going to be, more of a $213,000 number, not the $156,000. So I have comfort in doing that, knowing that we're looking at the overall sustainability and structure of the department.
Michael?
It refers to process a lot in the survey. What do they mean by process?
Well, I can't predict what people thought when they were taking the survey, but what jumps to us is, how a permit gets circulated in our office to get it out the door. And that's everything from the time you walk in the door with the permit to the time it comes out. And we feel like what we can work on are on both sides of the fence, planning and building. And building, we feel like oftentimes a permit has to wait in line for its review by either the plans examiner or the zoning official. Or, and we'll caveat this as well, we have all our outside referrals. So we don't have a lot of control over how quickly the fire department or other agencies outside of our office can turn things around. But I think that they are responsive and want to work with us on trying to meet this goal. But process has a lot to do, if we're just talking about the building department process, I think people believe that the second they put something in the door, their clock has started. And so where we may say something took 12 weeks to get out the door, it may be because we're waiting on information that wasn't submitted to come back from the applicant as well. So, you know, there's all different ways people might think, oh, I'm frustrated, they took my permit in, but now they need more information, something like that. So I'm not sure, Michael, I can't answer for everyone. We just know that we want to try to get all the cogs in our wheel moving as quickly as we can. And if someone doesn't or isn't able to get us the information right away because of a technical issue with an engineering issue or something else, then, you know, hopefully everybody's understanding that that process does have to stop until we get the correct information to ensure that we're issuing a valid permit.
So your interpretation is speed of process, in other words, that's what you're talking about.
I think quality-wise, I don't think we have gotten arguments that we aren't turning out quality.
I didn't mention quality.
No, but I know, but from a process perspective, yes, I'm thinking speed is the number one.
So, I mean, I think, you know, given that it was sort of an amorphous kind of response process for obtaining permits, we need some improvement. So I agree with speed, that's fine. If it's more timely, great. But I think your department needs to actually interview people and say, what do you think? What's the hang up in the process? Was it just speed, or is it something else?
Communication.
Because otherwise, are we really then improving? I don't know, since it was indeterminate as far as I'm concerned. So.
Just a follow-up on that, you know, this was, and we never really had a follow-up on the new software thing that was, I mean, that was supposed to handle a lot of these problems, knowing where the application is, knowing where the checklist, having people be able to get those answers quickly as opposed to, you know, you call and it's, I mean, I'm guessing sometimes the answer is it's in the process. That doesn't really tell anybody anything. That's like me, I use restaurant examples, going to the customer and saying, well, yeah, they're cooking it. Well, what does that mean? And it just creates frustration for that happening, you know. Anyway, I think it's important to point out that, as George said, you know, it was not only seen as a important priority level for the county, but it was also seen as a weak spot. It wasn't a tremendously bad rating, but it was something that we can certainly improve on, and I think this is one of the things that will do it. I'm certainly in favor of this this supplemental request. I think it's moving in the right direction. I would also add, I think we should get Pat Bingham to do a press release on this, because I think the public perception is a big part of it, to say, we realize that we're not perfect in our building department, and we're adding more people. I'm not perfect as a commissioner. I realize that. I'll say that too. So it's not a criticism, it's a realization. And we're adding people to try to do better and try to do more. Moreover, I had a long discussion with John Peacock on Monday. I think this is about the third time we've had like a little bite at the apple to community development. And every time I've said, we really need a big work session on how that department is divided up, how the budgeting is done, how these things are done. And I'm okay with doing this, but again, I feel uncomfortable continuing to take little bites without knowing the big policy decision-making stuff of how the budget is supported through the general fund, how it's supported through fees, what portion of everybody's salaries and stuff are divided between long-range planning and actual building development and those sorts of things. So I'm just going to
We should do
strongly reiterate the fact that,
We can't wait for the opportunity. Yeah.
that's got to come soon.
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, I would agree with what you've said and what Michael said prior about, drilling down a little more on the interviews. The one thing I'm wondering is when someone does turn in their application and you time, date, stamp it, do you give them any sort of form back that says, if this information is incomplete, we will have to hold and wait until it's coming? We do, outsource this to other commenting agencies. We must wait for their response, and have them sign or acknowledge that they understand that it's not like a race to the finish. I mean, it is do all you can, but that there are outside factors you don't control.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
I note that there is an increase in expenditure here, but then a greater anticipated increase in revenue. And we're not in the business of making money necessarily, but we are in the business of providing service to the public. And I know just from complaints over the years, this speed of turnaround comes back periodically over a lot of years. And I'm pretty sure the construction industry and people doing the projects, hiring people to do it would really appreciate having, gaining an extra few weeks on the construction season so they can get things lined up and maybe be able to get their materials at a better price and all sorts of benefits to them. So I'd be totally in favor of this.
And one other small comment to yours, Rob, actually I forgot, but, the thing is too, we had to gear down and then gear back up. We really had to pare back quite a bit with the recession and things like that, and I think we've been cautious and studious about, applying, positions back into a full-time cohort, and this is the right time.
Great. I think you have our
Thank you, and we look forward to it.
direction to move forward.
Rob, I wonder if we...
Caucus roundtable meeting summary?
We'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So then on the long-range side of the Community Development Department, we wanted to, just as an FYI, be aware of the fact that we met with several of the rural county caucuses on March 6th, pulled together a roundtable meeting with them to begin the dialogue about updating their land use master plans, several of which, let's see, most of which were last updated in 2003. And we had a great turnout, reasonably great. We had about 20 people, and 7 of the 9 rural caucuses were able to have representatives there. And George also attended, which was great. And we got really good feedback, I think, from the caucus representatives about what topic areas need to be updated in the land use master plans that exist today. And several of the land use patterns really have been set in those rural areas, but we wanted to make sure that the plans remain relevant and are addressing issues that are that perhaps weren't on the table in 2003 when we last had a look. And so we did get feedback on specific topics that we should be looking at, several of which are outlined in the memorandum you have. We heard back on water quality and quantity, broadband coverage. No surprise, we heard some people say that we need to look at the definition of agriculture, commercial agriculture versus traditional agriculture, as that relates to the discussion of marijuana in the county. And
And then we also looked at issues around the Thompson Divide. So it was a pretty broad-based discussion. And we weren't sure that everybody would be interested in updating their master plan and taking the time and effort. And to our pleasant surprise, pretty much everybody in the room said yes. We would like to see our plans updated. So moving forward, we will take the information that we got at the meeting and also do some updating to build out data that we have and work with some of our cooperating agencies outside of the county and then departments within the county to update more data. And we'll pull together redlined versions of the existing master plans, bring them back to the caucuses for their consideration and review, and then ultimately bring those back to the Planning Commission for review and adoption of updated plans. We're probably looking at a time frame of about a year or two, most realistically probably 2 years out for completing those plans. And I think that the information that we received at the caucus roundtable dovetails nicely with the survey that the county just received input from. And so we'll be consulting with the survey, with those survey results in addition to the information that we received at the meeting. And we are going to meet again with the caucuses on June 19th, just to touch base, to give them an opportunity to come back and us an opportunity to just to check in and see where we are. So that really just wanted to make you aware of that in the event that you have questions coming from caucus representatives and or others.
Rachel?
Well, I was going to say thank you for really moving right from the WOMP into the next segment of master plan updates. Yeah, it's a lot of work and appreciate that effort. The one thing I'd like to see if we could get at a little bit at the front end of this process, because based on those survey results we just saw, was it somewhere around 54% of people who said they live within a caucus area do not participate in their caucus?
Right.
And so that gets a little troublesome to me. You know, were they alienated in such a way that just, you know, really disagree with the direction the caucus is going and that's why they're not participating? Or was it just a time crunch and where things are going fine, so let these people keep handling it? I don't know what, but it seems that for this to be a valid exercise, there would have to be a mailing perhaps to all residents in any given caucus area to say this is when your caucus process is kicking off, and whether you've been involved or not in the past, this is going to update your area's master plan, and we strongly encourage you to come to whichever it is, if it's the first kickoff meeting where you guys are planning on being there, or the phone number and the email address of the current caucus liaison, so you can find out how to become involved in your county caucus's master plan. But I think that we need to, if we're going to take these as guiding documents for an area, know that, you know, people were given that opportunity to participate, awareness of the time schedules and things like that. Thanks.
Great idea.
Steve?
I remember when the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus was drafting the master plan. It was a huge amount of public outreach. A questionnaire went out, and we tried to get 100% of the people to respond to it. And it was a huge amount of effort by the residents there to accomplish that with the aid of the planning staff. But this looks like it's kind of, the staff is going to be suggesting changes or additions or changes to the master plans and then sending that to the caucus. So it's kind of a reverse direction from what some of it happened previously with, at least with Snowmass Capitol Creek.
Well,
We asked, and the caucus has said it'd be a great help if we could take
what we know from the agencies like Division, or Parks and Wildlife, and the updates that we got from Road and Bridge, and the updates that we got from Housing, or all the different groups that we asked for their input. They asked us to, or we asked if they would like us to plug in all that information in the relevant sections and give it as a suggestion for updates, but just as a kickoff, just as a starting point. We fully expect that a lot of these caucus, much like the Capitol Snowmass, will run with it themselves, but we want to be there and we want to be supportive and we want to give the data that we have, like the build out information, what's changed over the last 10 years, how many vacant lots are still left in the area, that sort of thing. We want to give all that information out front, and then depending on the caucus and the strength of the caucus, leadership and the capacity of the volunteers to get out there and do the work, we'll be there for the caucus groups if they need us, or we'll be happy to see them run with it and check in. Whatever.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
But also, as you remember, I remember that particular caucus effort, which was a huge undertaking. We were starting from scratch and putting together a future land use aspect to that plan in particular. And based on what we've seen and heard in the several recent years, the land use patterns may not require so much focus this time around because they may be pretty well set, reasonably set, not set in stone. And we're thinking that these are going to be more of an update, and that they're going to bring in topics and elements that perhaps in 2003 weren't so relevant. So rather than starting from scratch, we really are thinking that perhaps we'll be able to start from a good foundation and then just add needed elements that may be pertinent to a particular area. So that's our hope. We'll see. As Cindy said, it may really vary caucus by caucus.
Yeah, and I think too that you have the benefit of being able to look at all of the caucus master plans, and you see the commonalities and where they diverge in different ways. But probably a lot of them you can make one suggestion that will apply to all of them for ways to improve theirs. Or you can also, if you see a master plan that's kind of deficient in an area where others might be more up to speed on it, you could suggest changes to the one that to make, kind of bring the different master plans more in alignment with each other.
And that's part of our plan, if I might jump in, to continue to have these caucus roundtables where each caucus can share their insights with one another. And it's not just staff saying, we think you ought to do this, but if a great idea might have come across one caucus's table and they decided not to run with it, it may be something that another caucus might want even. Mm-hmm. And Rachel, we are hoping, we did in the budget plan for this a little bit, so we have some funds to get out there and do more outreach this year.
Great.
Other thoughts? Good.
And may I give you one more update? We didn't put it in the memo because we were just in the process of sitting down with some internal offices, but you had directed us to take a more specific look at the upper Castle Maroon Creek Valley. And so we're looking at that as sort of a sub-area plan or maybe a management plan versus a land use plan. And we have had initial discussions on that with with the Forest Service, and now Ellen and I are going to sit down with all the different stakeholders in the area and just start the discussion. The Forest Service, like all our public agencies, are strapped for staff and money, so they have to look with their new directors and supervisors whether or not this can be a priority for them. But I think that they are very interested in working with us, and we have a site visit planned, and we're going to get back together in late April. So that's moving along as well.
Very good.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Two other quick things in our memos of interest was a Thompson Divide grant thank you letter and a family visitors program thank you letter. Just FYIs in our memos of interest. And at this point, we are either waiting for Chris or...
Yeah, and Susan had tried to touch base with Chris. He is apparently in a board meeting and did not think he would be able to make it before 3:30. And so I think we have a couple of options. We could obviously discuss the request now amongst the board, or we could schedule it for another meeting and see if Chris can come back. I believe the event isn't occurring until August at this point. I do know they were trying to get funding lined up just for their planning purposes by the first week in April, but I suspect if it slipped, I believe, to April 8th, since our retreat is the 1st, we could do it then.
Rachel?
You never know how the regular meetings will go, but if Chris's flexible schedule and might be able to show up at the end of our regular meeting tomorrow, might be able to discuss it then. But otherwise, formally agendaing it to later is fine with me too.
Yeah, I would just leave it up to Chris. It may be easier just to schedule it during a work session time. If it's on the 8th, that may actually give us some more information in terms of what other partners he's already garnered their support on too.
Yeah, my own, I'm happy to move it to another work session. The only feedback that I would address to him on the information that we got is it's a little unclear as to whether or not this is a fundraising event and what the revenue side of things are on this event. I mean, they put a budget together that's just the expenses.
Well, they have a ticket sale price, but they don't
They have
estimate how many people they think will attend or anything like that. Or
Well, how many sponsorships are they sound, like George said, like who are their other contributors to it? You know, is this a celebration? You know, what's... Anyway.
I agree, and the question I'd have in case you're talking to Chris is I was wondering, is this looping in and working with groups like Wilderness Workshop? Or are we going to end up with competing celebrations in the valley, you know, or are they a partner? You know, this Wilderness Workshop is formed over wilderness area. So anyhow, I'd just love to know who else they're working with. So again, we don't have that potential of two different events on the same day in different directions. Rob,
Yep.
did we finish open discussion earlier? Because I know we've been jumping around
If
so
you'd like
much.
to do some more open discussion, that'd be fine.
Okay, I do have a couple of small items. And this is just to pass along for future meetings, John, on your behalf, but it's amazing how quickly we go from great ski weather to mud and flood season. And so, there's a lot of talk about how heavy the snowpack is, and it's just very dependent on temperatures to see whether we end up with flooding type of events or not. But just an update on preparations and public outreach being taken. Similar to that, I was watching a lot of the different news reports where they're really encouraging people to take their wildfire prevention measures now. Well, it's relatively safe to run a chainsaw and you don't have to worry about the sparks as much and other things, and kind of where we are with getting out the word about wildfire prevention and wildfire activities for homeowners this year. So again, those are just future items. And then I did want to update the board that Gail Schwartz's Senate Bill 23, which is the agricultural water efficiency bill. It is to allow agricultural interests to, should they increase their efficiency with new head gates or pivot spinkers or whatever, if they decrease their take from the river, the non-consumptible portion of the water they need for their crops, they would be able to dedicate that to in-stream flow purposes through the CWCB only from their point of current diversion to where the historic return flows occurred. So it doesn't shepherd it further down the river. It's landmark in many ways. It's a continuation of the efforts that she passed with Senate Bill 19 last year. And both Steve and I did testify on it before. when it was on the Senate side. She's been fortunate to get it through the Senate. Change and resistance to change in water law, water rights, and agriculture interests is really a tough mountain. But it is moving forward, and so I'm going to go down and testify on that on Monday on behalf of QQ. And I've been prepped in the past on this issue with John Ely and others, so it's kind of an update.
Anything else? She's going to be here at 3.
3 o'clock if we want to take a break.
So, and we're going to go back into executive session with that. So
If we go back into executive session now, Grassroots can break down for the day. We're
yeah,
done?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll take a motion to go back into executive session.
Just, Rob, just one moment, I just found this thing I was thinking of earlier, but Charlotte had forwarded us this letter about the Cold Basin, and I want to say the right.
Yeah,
It's about the reclamation, and they're really signing off on it, saying all the reclamation is done there.
Maybe we could get an analysis of that or comment on that from Chris Selden at tomorrow's regular meeting and give him a chance to look at it.
I think if we could determine whether we think they need to do any more work and not close it out right now. And I don't know which person
And I haven't
on our
had a
staff would
chance
be
to
the
see it,
appropriate
but-
one to look at that.
We can bring that back.
I had Chris and Cindy, who've been
Yeah.
together, could talk to us about tomorrow. I don't know if there's a protest period or an appeal period in that anyhow. I would make a motion to go into executive.
To continue our executive session, isn't it?
Well, we continued already, but to go back into
Oh.
executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations on land acquisition.
Second?
First and second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Grassroots. Okay, we'll be back here in 10 minutes.
Probably about 10 minutes, yeah.